Welcome to the Independent Thought Educational Webinar Series. And as part of our, Children Enviro Rights Program, uh, we are commemorating the World Environment Day today on 5th of June 2021. And as part of our panel, I'm very happy to share that we have a very distinguished panel today to speak on the subject. So we have Mr. Indra Narayan Jha, who is director of an institute in Patna named Institute of Environment and Eco Development. He has done extensive work on uh, water and soil contamination with various agencies. Then we have Dr. Pankaj Chandan, and he's a senior conservation scientist director and director of a program in the National Development Foundation, which looks after wildlife, climate change, and nature. Then we have Ms. Pramila Sharma, who is the country director of Pure Earth in India. Then we have Ms. Akansha Tiwari, who will be anchoring the whole program today from Independent Thought. And then we have Advocate Isha, who's partner ELDF, Enviro Legal Defense Firm, which is the first law firm which purely focuses on environmental rights and law in India. So we do have a very good panel today to talk about. And uh, before I start the program, I would like to share a small video which was uh, released by the UNCRC committee today. And so there's some audio issues, but let's listen to her and then I will repeat.
The Committee on the Rights of the Child has decided to deepen its focus on the environment and climate change. Over the coming months, a team of committee members will consult with outside experts, interested parties, and especially hundreds of children to produce what is called a general comment on child rights, the environment, and climate change. The general comment will provide authoritative guidance to the governments of the 196 countries that have ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child on what they must do to uphold children's rights to a safe and healthy environment. This will serve as an impetus for the global level change and a powerful tool for children and young people. So stay tuned. Finally, let me add in no uncertain terms that even as we prepare this general comment, we will continue to urge the governments to listen to children and young people's view.
So uh, she was uh, uh, speaking on behalf of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. She was Miss Mikiko Utani. She chairs the UN committee at the moment. So I'll just request Akansha to uh, speak a statement which was released by the UN committee because the audio was not so nice. So Akansha, if you can just read these lines for the viewers, please.
has decided to reinforce its efforts on environmental issues and the global climate crisis and to join the millions of children and young people who have mobilized around the world demanding that governments do more both domestically and internationally. At the end of its 87th annual online session held on 17th May to 4th June, ahead of World Environment Day celebrated on June 5th, the committee resolved to prepare its next comment under a working title Children's Rights and the Environment with a special focus on climate change. The committee regularly meets with many delegations of children, whereby climate change is often front and the center of the exchanges. Children refer to the dramatic events they witness and the impact on their daily lives, such as the rising ocean levels, the loss of biodiversity, worsening air pollution, increased hurricane activity, and the frequent increase and the frequent seizure of wildfires. This was the case when the committee held its 84th extraordinary session in Samoa in March 2020. Over the coming months, the committee will consult with states, outside experts, interested parties, and especially hundreds of children to produce its general comment number 26 on children's right and the environment with a special focus on climate change. This general comment will provide authoritative guidance to the government of the 196 countries that have ratified the on the Rights of the Child. In addition, it will serve as an impetus for global level change and as a powerful tool for children and young people, as well as their advocates, to hold governments and the other relevant actors accountable. Throughout this process, the Committee on the Rights of the Child is committed to continue to review how individual state parties implement the Convention on the Rights of the Child, including by listening to proposals formulated by children, acting on their demands for upholding their rights to a safe and healthy and sustainable environment. Ms. Maiko Otani, the chair of the committee, echoes the urgent message of the children by forcefully stating, "Join us for the quest for the global solutions to the climate crisis."
So thank you so much, Akansha, for reading through the statement. And uh, I'll just, before I hand over to the experts who uh, work closely on the environmental issues and the issues of children. Let me, as an organization, Independent Thought primarily focuses on issues of child rights and law connected to rights of children. And with my own personal experience of working on the environmental issue for some time, and I'm very glad that Isha is here from ELDF. Uh, 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 I personally feel that children has to be the center of our concern when we think of any issue for that matter, and specifically when we think of environment, because environmental issues are not only the present concern, but it also has an intergenerational impact, and it has more to do with the intergenerational equity aspect. So how much we take away from the mother earth and how much we are giving back, and in what condition, in what ways, what are the kind of pros and cons of various developmental initiatives happening in the world, be it very sensitive environmental regions, or it might be any positive sounding or positive looking development agendas of the government. So be it rapid urbanization, metros, or whatever. So how much these things impact children are, I think, has to be and should be the center of concern, and how our developmental planning, like we have something called EIA, environmental impact assessment, how much we also look at its impact on the rights of children. Like I keep telling my friends that my childhood in Patna was in a small colony. Just imagine if at that time there were 30 cars parked in the same campus. What would have been our memories? We were lucky that there were negligible number of cars, one or two cars people had, and the whole campus was free for us to you know play all kinds of games, both informal, formal, Olympic, non-Olympic games we used to play. Now just imagine the same small campus, there are say 26 cars parked because there are 26 flats. So if now you have 26 cars parked in that same place, the whole childhood and the memories will be completely lost. So I feel till the time environmental issues and developmental planning, I don't see them as opposite to each other. There can be a very integrated approach to both. So, but how these things keep children in focus and in center. So how child-centric, child centricity becomes primary, the best interest of children becomes primary. How we ensure happy childhood, as we say. And I'm very hopeful that Dr. Inchin, who is a member of the UNCRC committee, may also be joining. I want to convey messages from our side to him that how we can work toward, as Bhutan says, happiness indicators, and without keeping our children happy, providing them the right avenues and the right environment to live and flourish and grow, I don't think there's any scope for childhood in the world. So with that statement, I feel the speakers will obviously bring their expertise and experience on environment, but will also integrate and bring in the critical aspect of children, and how policymakers and both nationally and internationally must not only look at children but also bring them at the center of planning and center of whatever we do, conservation or whatever we do. So with that note, I'm handing over to Akanksha, and I have a responsibility to do. I am expected to show a PPT for Akanksha before she starts. So Akanksha, I'm showing your PPT. Akanksha, you want me to show the PPT, Akanksha? Or you would like to speak first?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
You want me to show the PPT?
Hello.
Akanksha, you want me to show the PPT? So I'm feeling there's some issues with the network. So let's not get stuck with the network issues. Akansha, can you hear us?
Sir, can you
Dr.
hear
Pankaj?
me?
Yes, sir.
Um, am I audible?
Akansha, you're audible. You please start with your presentation.
Sir, could you share the screen? I will start with my presentation. So the World Environment Day. So the topic, the theme that Independent Thought has chosen say the rights of participation will also to 2030 forests to farmlands. So only with healthy ecosystems can we counteract climate change and stop the collapse of biodiversity. This generation can make peace with nature, and the synergies can further be strengthened by involving children as decision makers, as they are the custodians and would be looking after the future. As the decade will shape the environment for the current and future generations, it is vital that young people's perspectives and feelings about the ecosystem and biodiversity are taken into account. Today, the theme of the World Environment Day 2021 is Reimagine, Recreate, and Restore, with the underlying theme being ecosystem restoration. The decision of the World Environment Day was taken at the Stockholm Conference on the Human Environment 1972. I'm so sorry, I think the network is an issue here. So, 50% of our coral reefs have already been lost, and up to 90% of the reefs could be lost by 2050. Even if global warming is limited to an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius, and that is the target set by various countries on the Paris COP and Paris Agreement. That the composite water management index report that is released by Niti Aayog in June 18 also highlights that about 600 million people in India are facing high to extreme water stress, air pollution, water pollution, and exposure to toxic substances together and other types of environmental harm cause about 1.5 million deaths of children under the age of 5 every year and contribute to disease, disability, and early mortality throughout their lives. With this, I'd like to end my presentation and hope that together this generation can make peace with nature. Um, so I would also request now Mr. Dr. Pankaj Chauhan, Mr. Dr. Pankaj Chandan, who is a wildlife biologist and an expert in Himalayan ecology and wildlife. He has a special interest in mountain waters and mountain-related conservation issues, and has received his training in wetland management from the Wildlife Institute of India at Dehradun. He studied wetland sciences and wetland ecology at Darwin University in Australia through a special scholarship from the Government of Australia. He's also completed his graduation in conservation leadership from conservation leadership colleges in Netherlands. He has about 20 years of field experience of working in wildlife conservation and management issues in Himalayas, and especially in high altitude regions. He's currently a senior conservation scientist and the director of Nature, Wildlife and Climate Change Program of the National Development Foundation. So with this, we welcome Dr. Chandan to speak on why ecosystem restoration is also a child rights issue and is critical for the survival of future generation.
Thanks, Akanksha. And at the outset, my greetings to everyone present here on the eve of World Environment Day. Of course, we are in very, very challenging times, but this day also reminds us of our responsibilities towards our future generations. As earlier panelists has also thrown light on the theme of the World Environment Day, which is reimagine, recreate, and restore. And at this point of time, we need to know that why restoration is become so top, has taken top position on the global agenda. uh, as today we are celebrating World Environment Day, I would like to share with all the panelists and all the children who are present here in this webinar my journey through the Himalayas, and what are the very, very wonderful, beautiful, and critical ecosystems which are present here and which we need to celebrate. So, can I share my screen?
Yes, sir. Please, please.
Yeah. So I'll share my screen. Share वीडियो कर दिया, तूने वीडियो कर दिया। Uh, exit. Uh, I'm sorry. Actually, it was working earlier, but it's not working right now.
No issues, sir. No issues, please.
Yeah, I'm about to get it.
So, sir, should I come after one speaker?
Uh, yes, please. Yes, please.
So,
Yeah.
Isha, if you are ready, then we can start with you.
Uh,
Meanwhile,
Let me once again share. Hmm? हो रहा है? It's coming. Just give me. I am logging on to other computer. Yeah.
so let Isha. Isha, maybe you can take over. So it's
Sure,
like
sir.
the Isha comes with a law background, and she's working with Enviro Legal Defense Firm, which is not only the leading law firm on environmental law issues, but also the first in India. So, with your expertise and understanding, Isha, over to you, please.
Right, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, completely. Thank you.
Right. I'm just going to share my screen in half a second, sir. This I'm going to share. I have a small presentation. I'm
Yeah,
just going to share my screen and uh, uh, just. So, should I send you my presentation so that it will be more convenient to share the screen, because there's some problem with the screen sharing here, sir.
okay.
Yeah. Should I WhatsApp it to you, sir?
Yeah, please, please.
I'll just do that. Just 2 minutes. I tried to share my screen, but it was not allowing me to share the screen. I'm just sending it to you, sir.
Are you logged in?
I'm logged in, sir. The internet connection also seems to be perfect. I don't know why there is a problem with the screen sharing. Just 1 second, sir. I'm so sorry for this. This is very embarrassing. Just 1 second.
Dr. Pankaj, are you able to?
Okay, can you see my screen, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Should I can start then, sir.
Yeah, please.
Right. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me on this very important World Environment Day. I'm an advocate. I've been practicing environmental law for the last 9 years, and I've been working with Mr. Sanjay Upadhyay at Enviro Legal Defense Firm. I
I'm really honored to be talking about this topic because environment and child rights are such important and diverse topics in themselves, and the synergy between them is so important to be established. I'm sure we'll be hearing from experts on child rights, and so I'm going to try and bring in environmental law to the best possible extent that I can, and I'm going to try and establish a linkage as well. So, if we move on to the next slide, this is how we'll be going about it. I'm going to talk about environmental law basics, its components. Then we're going to go to child rights and environment and what exists vis-a-vis child rights and environment. And I'm then going to talk about a few new trends that have emerged as far as environment and child rights are concerned, and we can then deliberate about the ideas for the future. So moving on to the foundation of environment and environmental law in India. Being a lawyer, I am bound to talk about the Constitution. So I hope my slide is visible to everybody and I'm clear and audible.
Perfect, Isha. You continue, please.
Right. So talking about the Constitution, which is our primary law for anything that happens in this country, and environment is no exception. India can very proudly say that it was the first country to insert an amendment into its constitution, allowing the state to protect the environment and safeguard public health, forests, and wildlife. What I'm going to try to do through this presentation is that I'm going to try and not only focus on environmental law, but I'm going to try and weave it with child rights to the best of my capabilities. So when we talk about environment in India, the first thing that comes to mind is the Constitution, and Article 48A and 51G is what stick out, because those are the two provisions in the Constitution which talk about the responsibility of the state for safeguarding public health, forests, and wildlife. Then a very landmark development in the Constitution was the 42nd Amendment, which was also called the mini Constitution, which kind of revamped the way one was looking at environment. A socialistic approach was included in the Constitution, which included environment as well. There were certain subjects that were transferred to the concurrent list so that the state could have more say in environment-related matters. I'm going to try and explain why this is relevant to child rights. Just bear with me for some time. So the Constitution basically imposes upon the state a duty to ensure that its citizens have access to public health, a good environment, forests, and wildlife. The government has been given a wide range of powers with regard to protecting the environment in India, with regard to also shutting down potentially harmful entities and imposing restrictions. Moving on to talking about environmental law, Constitution, rights of child, and protection of environment, let us try and understand what is environment. Environment would include water, air, land, and their interrelationships, and also the interrelationships of these three components with human beings, other living creatures, plants, and microorganisms that exist on the planet Earth. That is the environment in general. Now, this definition has also found place in statutes such as the Environment Protection Act 1986 and the NGT Act. So, breaking it down after having established this land, water, and air component, let me then further go down to what else constitutes the environment. So, environment is an interplay of forests, wildlife, local governance, disaster management, oceans and coasts, water and watersheds, land and rehabilitation, environmental governments. All these components together form a composite unit called the environment. So when I talk about the environment, forest is one category that has, it is so deep and it's so it's so complex on its own that it could be a subject matter for one entire person's life to study. Wildlife is another extensive component which has so much gravity and so much importance that forest and wildlife are such different entities to look at that way. Then you cannot ignore people while you look at environment, and that is why we talked about the interplay between air, water, and land, and the interrelationship. And that's why concepts such as decentralization and local governments come into play. So accordingly, study of environmental law is specialized to suit these elements. And it's safe to say that the condition of the environment defines what is the condition of the people that inhabit the environment they are living in. Now, I'd like to stress a little bit more on this slide and talk about certain legislations that have been enacted. I mean, they're not a part of my slide, but I'd like to talk about them because they're very, very central to environment conservation in India. And then we'll try and move on to how they are connected to rights of the child. So we had the Environment Protection Act in 1986, which was a result of the Bhopal gas tragedy. Bhopal gas tragedy, again, if you see, was one of the most disastrous environmental catastrophes that actually happened in the world, actually. And if you talk about children especially, children were the worst affected from this tragedy, because this gas started at 3 feet. So anybody who's 3 feet and higher would get affected by this disease, by the gas that was leaked as a result of Bhopal gas tragedy. So environmental law in India, if I may say it with some authority, has been the result of disasters that have happened, which have led to legislations being formed. But having said that, there are some very, very robust mechanisms that exist, namely the Environment Protection Act, the Wildlife Protection Act, the Biological Diversity Act, the Indian Forest Act. There are at least 16 rules under the Environment Protection Act which deal with very, very complex, very, very specialized issues such as hazardous waste management, municipal waste management, e-waste management, biomedical waste management, and we can have a complete session on each of these rules and regulations. But since that is not the theme for today, I'm going to move on to what is the perception of environmental rights and the environment. So as we talked about, when we talk about, so in the environment and developmental law arena, and even when environmental laws are agitated in courts, 48A and 51G of the Constitution are the first things to be invoked, which is the duty of the government. What are we forgetting here? We are forgetting here our responsibilities, and what are we to do as citizens to help the government fulfill its duties. After 48A and 51G, we have seen gradual shifts to Article 21, which is right of life, and right to environment was defined by the Supreme Court in a lot of landmark decisions as a part of life, included the right of clean waters, clean rivers, and we have pioneers in environmental law fields such as Dr. M.C. Mehta, and a plethora of cases to thank for the kind of rivers that we have today, and it could have been, basically what I want to say, it could have been worse. And it's thanks to these doyens of environmental law, which and their interpretation of right to life, that we have the whatever resources we have today is what we have. Coming to World Environmental Day and children, as somebody who's gone to school and college, I can say that World Environment was for us specific to World Environmental Day. So we did tree plantation, we did painting competitions, we had rallies, we learned about rainwater harvesting, and we had slogan writing competitions. But unfortunately, it remained confined to that one day. So as kids, environment was only 5th June and World Environmental Day and the activities that were part of that day. No importance was given to children to do more than that. They were never included in the policy. See, we as children, you cannot be a part of policy, but as children, a thought process at least can be triggered. So environment remaining confined to World Environment Day was the biggest tragedy of World Environment Day, because World Environment Day means that you follow practices throughout the year and you kind of commemorate it on one day. Which brings me to the most important topic, that opportunity to learn about the environment, both at the school and college levels, is severely lacking. And I, as an environmental lawyer, I can say that when I went to college, environmental law was given the least amount of importance. Environment and its related laws, basically. Let me not just say environment laws. It was given the least amount of importance, and I'm not blaming anybody. probably I'm also a part of the cog that thinks that environment, though, it'll keep happening at its own pace, except it requires a dedicated approach, and that is lacking at both the school and college levels. So basically the point is that the thought process is not being sparked in kids at their level, so that they can go on and effectuate change later on. Moving on. So what is the need of the hour? Like the distinguished speakers before me also stated, that there is a need for integrating environment protection and child rights. Like it has already been rehashed, that reimagine, restore, and recreate. That is the theme for this World Environment Day. So let us reimagine child rights. And I'm sure that as a child rights NGO and as a child rights organization, as child rights experts, you would better know the field situations, the day-to-day struggles that kind of you face while realizing child rights. But what we need to do is we need to reimagine child rights and make environment a basic of such rights. So what do we need to do for that? We need to integrate children in environment conservation as a participatory approach. I'm sure we know that participatory approaches have gone a long way in conservation, be it joint forest management, be it participatory forest management, be it participatory wildlife management. Participation, and it should start at the level when you are exposed to the world. If you're not exposed to the concept of environment protection at the school and the college levels, then the chances of you becoming aware and contributing to its conservation becomes very minuscule and unfortunate, because probably young minds, bright minds, are devoid of that opportunity. Need for integration of environmental principles into the day-to-day routine, because basically what I'm trying to say is environmental consciousness needs to be triggered, not only by a general studies subject in school, but also through a dedicated agenda. And I'm not saying it's all bleak. We will come to a situation where I can say that we are making huge strides in this, except the problem of the hour needs to be acknowledged. What I can say with some authority is also that knowledge of civic authorities. This is something so basic. We can start with knowledge of civic authorities and disseminate this information to the children. You are seeing waste being dumped in your colony. Who should you approach? You are seeing a tree being cut in your colony. You think that's wrong? Who should be approached? And the best part is today's kids are very mature. They are very sensitive and they are very smart. They want to do things, except we need to handhold them to how to do things. Social media is such a strong tool for such activities, because these are such tech savvy kids that they can be utilized to effectuate monumental changes. There are so many movements that have, if in the past 2-3 years, 5 years, that we see that Instagram, Facebook statuses. I mean, even though they are statuses, but they are at least doing the job of sparking a thought process, which is also which was so lacking and which is so important. Even if 100 people are posting something, 5 people come out and do something about it is a job well done. I think whatever I've spoken about till now is something that all of you know, because you're so experienced in these fields. What I can tell you about as a lawyer who's practicing in courts, I've seen kids leading the way in the courts as well. And Wordsworth was not more right than when he said the child is the father of man. Let me tell you about a very interesting case in the Supreme Court by this little man called Mr. Ajay Dubey, who was an 11-year-old child who claimed to see his right to see the tiger in the wild as his fundamental right. He was aware that when the MP High Court banned tiger tourism in core areas, he said that this is not on and I need to see the tiger. Tourism is a part of my fundamental right. And the Supreme Court agreed to it. He got his right to see the tiger in the wild. So he was aware, he was encouraged, and he took this step and he got basically what he wanted. That's what children do. And if they can be channeled in this direction, then nothing can be better than this. Let me tell you about another very, very interesting case called Aditya Dubey in the NGT, which was for the enforcement of a very complex principle called extended producer liability. And let me also tell you that a lot of lawyers also don't understand what is extended producer liability under the Environment Protection Act. So this gentleman, he moved a petition in the National Green Tribunal for against excessive plastic use by giants such as Amazon and Flipkart, and the NGT is taking very, very strong cognizance of this fact. Plus, he saw plastic pollution. He saw the fact that plastic was being circulated in the oceans, but plastic was everywhere. It's not biodegradable. So he went ahead and he said whatever he had to in his small petition before the NGT, and said that there is a lot of plastics that Amazon and Flipkart send when I order goods out of their websites, and that needs to stop. And I'm sure would have seen some change in the way Amazon packages its goods today. Then there are two little girls in the NGT who argue their own case against noise pollution and waste disposal that they are facing in their own colony. So these children are motivated. These children want to do something. They just need to be pushed in the right direction. And this is what brings me to my next slide, which is the way ahead. I saw while researching a little bit, I saw that Children Raw Research Center is an initiative that Independent Thought has kind of advocated, and they want to develop modules for child protection studies. And I think interweaving environment into this would be a great way to fully realize the potential of this Children Law Research Center. And organizations such as us would be very, very honored to kind of help you or kind of associate with these, because if it starts from here, basically, it starts from here as to how to make environment protection a part of a child's day-to-day life. Environment, what I've realized in my 9 years of environmental law practice is that it's a very diverse and dynamic concept. It's so difficult to kind of encapsulate it in a 10-minute talk or in a 50. It's ever expanding, it's ever changing, and the emphasis on such a dynamic concept needs to be commensurate to how dynamic it is. And we need to recognize children as not only participants, but leaders. Everybody can't be a Greta Thunberg and a Malala, but inspirations and the thought process is where we need to start. And every child can be a harbinger of change and protector of the environment. Only the conditioning needs to be right. With that, I'll say thank you. I hope I was able to bring in some new information, and I hope somebody benefited even 1% through it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Isha, and it was really not only a large canvas you covered, but very beautifully you brought in the child rights aspect to it, and not only as receivers of legislations, but children as leaders is something which you kind of portrayed in your presentation. That was very encouraging, not only for us, but I think anyone who looks at this webinar, or even because these recordings stay on the YouTube forever. So I think it will go a long way motivating people and children take up issues of concern, and especially linked to environment. So thank you so much. Akansha, is your network okay, or?
Yes, it's better. It's better.
Yeah, please.
So I'd like to actually add a very nice point. Like, I'd like to highlight some points that Isha ma'am had spoken of. The fact that Environmental Protection Act in 1987 started off with Bhopal gas tragedy, which was it was methyl isocyanide, and that's a pollutant. I think the toxic pollutants make a really big impact in your health issues. The outcome are health issues, and probably children are also very and I think they are the ones in maximum danger, and they do not have enough platforms to put it out there that their health it's in a jeopardy, and how they should. And so the fact that environment should be principles of environmental protection should be embedded at an early childhood. So with that, it's very essential to have these platforms, and I think the government should also take a lead in this to
So, I think the network issue continues with uh, Akansha. So, Dr. Pankaj, thanks for joining back. So, over to you, sir.
यहीं से दिखाओ कि यहीं से
uh, let me try.
Please, sir, please.
I'm trying share screen and file is open. Can you guide me, sir, what exactly it is? Entire screen it's saying.
No, you open your PPT, then come to this.
No, I
Row.
opened it, and then I have to minimize it. Yeah, keep it open.
No, keep it open. There's a
Yes,
share option below.
share.
Share screen. Instead of video, share screen.
Yeah, share screen. I have said. Then it
And then
says entire.
select. No, select. There are three options on the top.
All three.
No, just move to window.
Window. Okay,
Then select your
and share
PPT.
पीपीटी को क्लिक करो शेयर
and share. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'll put it.
On full screen if you can, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry for that technical glitch, but
No,
on
if you
today's
can put
World
it on full
Environment
screen, sir.
Day, uh, today's World Environment Day, I'm sharing a journey, my journey through Himalayas with the viewers of this webinar, and basically let's try to celebrate what we have in the environment. And as far as children are concerned, for them also in a very easy to understand language, I'll say this is a water body in Ladakh, Lake Sumariri, at an altitude of 4600 meters above sea level. And during winters you can actually walk on this lake because they freeze. And in a easy to understand language, I always say to the kids, ये कुदरत ने पानी की टंकियां रखी हुई हैं हिमालयाज में, and because of these water bodies only we get mighty rivers like Indus, Ganges, Brahmaputra. And as we are also talking about child rights today, future generation water security depends on how we react to the changes on these water bodies. This is another water body called Yayaso. And Ladakh wetlands are the only place in India where endangered birds like black-necked crane and one of the highest flying birds of the world, bar-headed goose, they breed also. And again, if we look at this particular wetland, you see a water tank, and a beautiful stream originates from this water body and again enters into river Indus. And that's how mighty rivers like Indus, who gave my country also its name, originate, and then they contribute their waters to billions downstream. So these water bodies are very very critical for these mighty rivers. And here I would also like to emphasize that water coming out of Himalayas, because of these water bodies, sports, 40% of the world population is dependent on the water coming from the Himalayas. And it is just because of these water bodies that we get water in these rivers. This is a water body again, Sumereri, and you see these islands. These are from biodiversity point of view also the highest flying bird of the world. As I said, bar-headed goose. Its nests are here in these type of water bodies. So here, from biodiversity point of view also, these water bodies are very, very critical. And this is a bar-headed geese. During summer months, it goes to higher altitudes for breeding, but winters it goes to areas like Bharatpur. Even you can see in wetlands around Delhi, other parts of the country also. But how we came to know that this is the highest flying bird of the world was a study by Wildlife Institute of India, when they placed a transmitter on this bird in Bharatpur, Rajasthan, and later when they were monitoring, it flew above Mount Everest. So these are the uniqueness of these water bodies. I have worked for many years on this particular water body also. Uh, it's a transboundary water body, and the famous Three Idiot movie was shot here, to be very precise, that how we'll connect with this water body. Is it's a basically sea on the sky. Its length is 153 kilometers, and two-third part is in China, rest is in India. But immense significance as a source of water in the Himalayan region also. And one of the studies we conducted on the bathymetry, we called it, to know about the depth of this water body. It is more than 180 meters deep at certain points. Then if we move to Kashmir, Pir Panjal area, again, these are the water bodies which are very, very important. This is a water body, Chandratal, which is, this particular landscape is a source of mighty Chanab, which flows through Jammu, but it originates from here. So the point here is we need to keep a very close eye on these water bodies whenever we talk about protecting these water bodies. Then if we move to Sikkim, uh, again these type of water bodies are there. Arunachal Pradesh also has hundreds of wetlands, which are major source of water in these areas. And if we like to, as I mentioned earlier, that Himalayan rivers contribute 20, their water to more than 29%.
So, you're not audible.
Mr. Chandan was talking about wetlands. So wetlands are an ecotone, and actually, even in Chennai, I think wetlands have so much significance because when wetlands were not because there was a lot of industrial development that had taken place on natural wetlands, and there was one time when Chennai was flooded because there were no they have in urbanization on the wetlands. So the wetlands have a lot of significance, and in fact that even the climate change aspect that the UN right now is talking about, a lot of deforestation and ecosystem restoration. Their biggest plan is to restore peatlands, which are actually store a lot of water. a lot of carbon dioxide, and they are a big store for carbon. They're a big carbon storage, and even though wetlands are, and there's a lot of significance attached with wetlands, the fact that wetlands have the ability to naturally purify water also with the kind of elements that wetlands do have. So, and I think we've lost Mr. Chandan, so, but I think with this we can probably proceed to. I think he's not joined in yet, but Vikram sir, do you think we should proceed with Mr. Jha and Pramila ma'am?
Akansha, please proceed.
Hanji. Okay, so with this, I'd like to introduce Miss Pramila Sharma Malik, who is the country director for Pure Earth India, and she is Pure Earth is an international organization that works towards addressing the public health issues caused by heavy metal pollutants, especially lead. She holds a master's degree in environmental sciences, and her association with the group is for about 15 years. And Pure Earth works collaboratively, engaging with all stakeholders, including industry, informal polluters, academic institutions, grassroots and civil societies, local leaders, national and state level government organizations. Today, we have invited her along with their local partners, the Institute of Environment and Eco Development in Bihar, to share one of the first of its kind of project completed in an area contaminated with lead and affected health of children and community living around. And with ma'am, I would also like to introduce who Mr. Ayan Jha, who is the managing director for the Institute of Environment and Eco Development in Patna. He's also the advisor for the Shiva Testing House in Patna, which is an environmental laboratory recognized by the Ministry of Environment and Forest since 1997. So over to you, Miss Pramila ji. Over to you.
Thank you, Akanksha. That's a very well summed up introduction of us, both Mr. Jha and myself. Yeah, we are very happy to be here sharing the platform to mark the Environment Day. And we'd like to share, some of our work that we are doing together, uh, both Pure Earth and Institute of Environment and Eco Development towards reducing pollution, saving lives, and ultimately protecting the Mother Earth. So we take you through a presentation, and let me just play that. All right. Just give me a second, please. Right. So we have this presentation, and we take you through sharing why we are doing what we are doing and where we are in terms of accomplishments that we have resolved. Akanksha has already introduced us, but let me also share more about us. That yes, we are an international not-for-profit. We are headquartered in New York, and we are working in about 24 low and mid-income countries, including India, for the last decade and a half, mainly to reduce the impacts of disease-causing pollutants, which are coming from hazardous industries and mining. Um, we are also the moving spirit behind the Lancet commissioned a very well received report came out in 2017 that you might have read about, and that actually revealed the underreported contribution of all kind of pollution, soil, water, air, to the global burden of disease. And it also kind of provided analysis of a scope of economic, and health from the emerging data set on the pollution.
मीटिंग लॉक कर दीजिए जिसकी मीटिंग
Any issues? I'm sorry. All right.
No, Pramila, continue, please.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we are also the support organization behind the Global Alliance on Health and Pollution, which is a collaborative internet network of more than 60 members that include multilateral, bilateral organizations, NGOs, and governments of about 22 countries that are advocating for resources as well as support for highlighting the need of addressing pollution vis-a-vis its implication on public health. As Isha previously mentioned, that environment and environmental issues are actually a plethora of. It's like a worm can. You talk about many an issues, brown, green, and we have chosen the brown agenda because a lot of it being done on biodiversity, climate change aspects, but very few people are actually doing something on the ground. So we have picked up the most dirtiest work, and even among that we have chosen the most worst contaminant with a focus for the next 5 to 10 years, and it's lead, and it's everybody knows about it, and everybody in India particularly might have heard of it when about 6 years ago the issue of lead in Maggie erupted. And for that, Pure Earth has launched an initiative along with UNICEF and Clarios Foundation to actually raise awareness on the issue and mobilize resources. And Violet will talk about that in a bit. What we do, we basically identify the polluted, contaminated places and try to ascertain how much impact they are causing on the public health, particularly the health of children who are the most vulnerable among the community members. We clean those sites, and world over, in the last 15 years, we have cleaned up about 120 sites, which were impacting about 50 lakh people, and 3 of such sites are India, and we are going to talk about one such project in India in a short while. Yes, we work collaboratively with government, and we do research. All our work is backed up with good science and data. I like Jha to please speak about yourself, and they are very valuable partners to us.
Thank you, ma'am. Greetings to all panelists, and thank you for Srivastavaji. Please give the chance for deliberate our speech about to share our working about it. So it is established in 2003 with the support of the scientists, environmentalists, and the researchers. And the main topics is issue was the ecology protections of ecologicals and ecological balances for the sustainable by the biodiversities, because ecology is very important for us, and it plays the significant role in the living beings as wellness. It provides the new knowledge of the independent between the peoples and the natures that is the vital for the food productions, maintaining clean air, waters, and the sustainable biodiversity in the changing climates. And second is the sociology is also we believe in the zero emissions and the zero waste from the commercial as well as the residential areas. And third one is the economics. So environmental issues impact on the economics 5.4% of the India's GDP. So our work of the area is first is the pollutions, working on the heavy metal pollution. Second is the ecosystem restoration, because environmental day is the ecosystem management and depending upon the 3 R's. So restoration is very important. And another is the plantations. We believe in the plantations because let us shave the tree and tree shave us. And third one is the biodiversity conservations. Next slide. And heavy metals, as we know that e-waste is the very pollutants things in the environments, and we have implemented some mass awareness with the support of the government of India, Mighty, and NASCOM foundations and other NGOs partners, and we have achieved the community levels awareness about the 15 lakhs peoples. We have go to the schools, 200 schools, and we have contacted 132 colleges. Consumers, we have aware 700 consumers, and also we have aware bulk consumers 120, informal sectors 24, and we have organized the Nukkar Nataks through the awareness on the e-waste management. Next. And I have another campaigns, biodiversity conservation, because sparrow conservation is very important, and due to this climate change and the felling of the tree, absence of the ventilations in the houses, and the non-availability of the worms, fillings, concrete structures, radiations from the mobile towers, etc. So our teeny partners of the life beings sparrow is the reducing day to day. So it is need to conserve the sparrow, and I have started the nestings. Nestings and providing the foods through our support sets. So our target is the next future generation, futures in the approximately 1 lakh nesting among our the communities. And the next slides. And we have collaborated with the Pure Earth US-based organization in the leadership of the Pramila Sharma Mems, and we have started campaign from the toxic site identifications and work with the safe lead pollution free in Bihar. So toxic site was identified in the different part of the Bihar, Jharkhand, eastern part of the UP, as well as some part of the West Bengal. So this is the small video for the sharing to you, and I have done the tremendous job in this sector with the support of the Pure Earth. Please see.
This is Sonakshi. She lives in Karmalichak, an industrial suburb in northeast India. Sonakshi School is located adjacent to this blue building, where local residents produce lead-acid batteries, like those found in automobiles, exposing her and the other children to dangerous levels of lead contamination. Her grandfather, the school's principal, is very concerned.
सोनाक्षी ग्रैंडसन है हमारी, तो मुझे चिंता तो रहेगा ही। जी, हमारा नाम शशिकांत सिन्हा हुआ और मैं एक स्कूल चलाता हूँ जिसका नाम नेशनल चिल्ड्रन स्कूल है। क्योंकि यहाँ हमारे छोटे छोटे बच्चे भी हैं और नियर अबाउट 250 चिल्ड्रंस हमारे बच्चे हैं, ये मेरे ही बच्चे हुए और कुछ इस लार्ज स्केल में भी हैं जो कि यहाँ लाइवलीहुड अर्निंग करते हैं, डेली बेसिस काम करते हैं। ये प्रदूषण के कारखाने से जो प्रदूषित जो हमारे जो बैटरी के बगल में बनता है, तो इससे तो मैं काफी चिंतित है।
Exposure to lead presents a global health threat, particularly to children in low and middle-income countries. Informal and substandard lead-acid battery production and recycling is a widespread practice. Lead-contaminated waste, fumes, and dust can migrate from these sites and be ingested or inhaled, causing lead poisoning, IQ loss in children, developmental and behavioral changes, and other lifelong health impacts.
लर्निंग पावर या लर्निंग मेमोरी हो गया, बच्चे सब छोटे छोटे हैं तो इम्पैक्ट होता है। फ्रस्ट्रेशन तो है और फीलिंग एंगर तो नहीं कर सकते हैं, फ्रस्ट्रेशन तो होता है। तो मैंने तो पहले क्या देखा कि मुलाकात मुझे झांसा सर से हुई और इनके साथ में और भी लोग टीम के थे, तो इन्होंने मिट्टी के सॉइल की जांच की। सॉइल की जांच करने के बाद में जो इन्होंने पाया कि जो है मिट्टी में काफ़ी जो है यहाँ लेड की मात्रा है।
और इसको जानने के लिए बच्चों में लेड लेवल का टेस्ट करवाया और उनके खून में लेड लेवल की मात्रा काफी बढ़ी। बच्चों को बचाने के लिए कंटामिनेटेड सॉइल को कैप्सुलेट कर दिया। लॉन्ग टर्म सॉल्यूशन यह है कि रेसिडेंशियल एरिया में इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर का बैटरी ऑपरेशन नहीं होना चाहिए। हमारे तमाम प्रयासों के बावजूद जो इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर में जो काम कर रहे थे, 1 साल के बाद पुनः फिर काम स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं। यह एक जटिल समस्या है। लेड पॉइजनिंग एक पब्लिक हेल्थ समस्या है और जितना लोग इससे अवेयर नहीं रहेंगे उतनी जटिलता पैदा होती चलेगी, जिसमें प्रोड्यूसर को, रेगुलेटर को और कम्युनिटी को एक साथ मिलकर काम करने की जरूरत है।
किसी खास एक व्यक्ति का तो है नहीं, हवा है, पानी है, ये सारी कोई एक व्यक्ति का नहीं होता, ये सारे लोगों का होता है। जब सारे लोगों का होता है तो
और सरकार भी इसको एक्नॉलेज कर रही है, समस्याओं को समाधान कर रही है।
Karmalichak is only one example of the global lead pollution crisis. This plays out in thousands of places across the developing world, where poverty is endemic, options for livelihoods are limited, and environmental controls weak.
I am requesting to Purmila ma'am, please continue the next slide. Hello.
Thank you, Jhasab. Yes. So I'm sure this short video might have give you an idea about, the issue that we are trying to address and showcase, how it can be solved. Let me continue with my presentation and tell you a little more in detail about what exactly we have done here in Karmalichak. So Pure Earth, along with its partner organizations world over, they are preparing a kind of inventory of all the contaminated hotspots in order to understand how big is the problem and how much it is impacting the people in its surrounding, particularly the children, as I mentioned earlier. So far, in about 60 countries, we have cataloged about 5,000 sites. And in India, we have about 600 plus of those. And to our utter dismay, half of those sites are contaminated with lead. And one of the biggest source for lead contamination is coming out to be the informal recycling of lead acid batteries, which unfortunately a major part of it is happening in the unregulated sector, mostly in the backyards or in the residential areas like in Karmalichak that we have seen in that video. Apart from the battery recycling operations, battery repair, reconditioning, and all those kind of operations, the lead generated from the dust and from the fumes after melting, those lead to make it again in the batteries. There are other sources also, such as adulterated spices. Those who are living in big cities and using branded spices may not be finding it an issue, but in the vast majority of the country, people are using those grounded spices locally, and the issue is prevalent, but it needs to be looked into it. And then there are other sources of lead entering the human life, as the use of glazed pottery that we see. There are other sources of lead also, e-waste, as has been mentioned earlier. You might have heard about lead in paint issues, those artificial jewelry that is contaminated, certain non-branded traditional medicines and cosmetics also. So but yes, we as an organization with limited scope of work, we are focusing on those three main sources to deal with. As a matter of fact, to support the work that we are doing, we do a lot of research. And as a result, we published a report jointly with UNICEF last year in 2020. And that gave a shocker to us because the data world over revealed that 1 in 3 child world over, they are poisoned with lead, literally, because they have lead in their blood, which is more than the values which is prescribed by the WHO. And among those, about 34% 1/3 of the kids, poisoned kids, are in India, and that's really a very worrying situation. This map actually shows the level of lead contamination in the blood of kids. I'll tell you why how much lead is devastating in my next slides. But let me tell you that in India, on an average, the kids are having 3 times the levels of lead that should be there. Though WHO and other agencies also say that no level of lead is safe for children, and India is at it's actually presenting a very bleak situation. And now let me tell you what actually lead does to children in particular, because children, they're the most vulnerable lot. Even before they are born, the lead travels the placental barrier in the mothers, and the newborn babies, they have their at the time of their birth, their frontal cortex, their brain is damaged, and that damage is permanent. It's like uh, irreversible. It actually leads them to their permanent IQ when they grow up, and as a result, we see an increase in disability and learning disorders and whatnot. And not just this, when later when they grow up and if they are still exposed to lead sources, they may develop other ailments in the bodies, and their kidneys are like damaged, and they also encounter the cardiovascular strokes. So, and not just these health, research and studies have shown that even the social aspects of environmental pollution and lead pollution are prevalent, and a certain social behaviors such as aggressiveness and violence is linked with the exposure of those kids with lead in their childhood. And not just social and health, even all the aspects of life are impacted. The lead travels through the biochain, the food chain, sorry, and it accumulates up there. And 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 you know the worrying aspect of this is also an economic loss to a country like ours, which is actually eyeing to reap the demographic dividend from the young population, which is already at whose health and whose future potential is already being challenged. And as per some calculations, the economic losses to the country, in terms of loss of productivity of these children when they grow up as adult, their capacities will be challenged, and they won't be able to produce or contribute into their lifelong earning and expenditure of governments on the healthcare services. It's coming out to be something of the tune of 5% of GDP's loss. But after having painted this gloomy picture, let me tell you that the problem to this solution exists, and it has been tried and tested. And Pure Earth has successfully done such project in several countries, including this Karmali Chak, and everywhere across. It includes the 7-step approach that talks about that actually does the environmental and health assessments, cleaning up those exposure sources such as the contaminated soils, their houses, the schools, the playground areas, covering those contaminated sites, and monitoring their blood lead levels, just to ascertain whether they are being. Let me show you what exactly we did in Karmali Chak. This site was identified by Jhasab's organization, and when in 2015 they came to us and they reported that Bihar is at a relatively significant threat of receiving a lot of lead contamination from all kind of sources, and it seems 90% of the batteries are recycled in the state of Bihar in the informal sector, which is by any comparison very high with the national standards. So we found that in Karmali Chak, there was this guy who was making illegally battery plates in a residential area, and just 5 meters across was one school where about 250 kids were studying. So we went there, we assessed the soil around the entire neighborhood, and we found that the lead levels in the soil was almost 10 to 15 times more than what has been prescribed even by the Indian standards. We tested some of those kids in the school, and we found that their levels in the blood are very high, and which actually gave us a reason to go and intervene. So we chalked out a characterization, a plan, and we uh, basically cleaned up those open patches which were used by the kids there to play around. The lead has this issue that it stays in the topsoil, and its half life is 700 years. So it has to be actually taken away or covered with something. So we covered it with the Ganga Balu rate se हमने cover किया those areas, and we constructed along दो गली में we constructed the lanes, pakka lanes, to cover those lead contaminated soils. And before doing that, we actually ensured that the guy stopped working. We spoke with him. We also spoke to the state agencies. We cleaned up the school. We cleaned up their areas. We also involved their local bodies. Mayor of the city was invited, and we did the after we completed the work. We did monitoring of both health as well as the environmental, and we found that the levels of lead in soil was actually reduced. But this at the end of this project, there was this another thing that came out, and we found that the lead levels among children was not reduced to our expectation, and that's when we found out that there are certain other sources also which are contributing to this. So, anyways, I talk about that later. But Jhasa, would you like to talk about this issue, which we are continuing in our efforts to deal with lead poisoning issue in Bihar?
Yeah.
So आप देखेंगे कि this informal battery recyclers, they are the poor guys. I mean, they are working on subsistence level because of this. Uh, High population and low literacy rate and less livelihood options. So they are actually getting into this business because this is quite lucrative and it has a lot of money. So what we think that we should not be taking away their livelihood options. So Mr. Jha and our organization have joined hands to see if we can encourage these guys, the guys who are into informal businesses, to actually move to formal, get mainstreamed into the formal business lines. And we are trying to make a cooperative of them and trying to link them with Chief Minister's Cluster Development Scheme. And that work is underway. This is just to show our work being endorsed by both by the national as well as the state government of Bihar. And yes, so as I mentioned earlier, that in Karmali Chowk, we found that apart from having removed that source of informal battery recycling and having covered the soil with fresh soil, the problem was still there. So we did a detailed study, in-depth study, to look at even other sources of lead exposure that that include paints in their house, that included their cosmetics, medicines that they were using, and all of that. So we formed a consortium of different agencies that included the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in India, USCDC, the Bihar state government, Jha Saab's organization, and us. We found we did a survey in the city of Patna, and to our dismay, we found that about 85% of the household and the kids of those households, they were all having very high levels of lead. And apparently the second most uh, possible and apparent source is coming out to be the contaminated turmeric, haldi that they were consuming. And now our efforts are on to deal and address that issue as well. I with that, I end my presentation, and I like to tell that the situation is definitely gloomy, but we all have to join hands and to now work at solving it. And Pure Earth and IED are two such organizations which are actually working to showcase how it can be done and how it can be replicated country over. Thank you very much. And I know we are almost at the end of the session, but we would like to take up any questions or any clarification if anybody would have.
Anything Jha Saab would like to share about his experience?
And this is the very very challenging, but I have started the toxic site identifications, and for the use led acid batteries there are lots of recyclers are available in the communities. Some are the Chhapra, some are available in the Darbhanga, and some are available in the Madhubani, and some are available in the Patna. So they have a very big caucus, and they are a skilled labor, and some one players are the sitting behind these activities. They so this is the very challenging, and in the leadership of the Propila ma'am, we have faced the all challenges, and his planning, monitorings, and plan of actions are very useful for us, and we achieve such types of activities.
Thank you. And I like to mention Vikramji and all the panelists here that we started towards working towards solving this problem, keeping children in mind,
Yeah.
and the children themselves, they proved to be the leader. As Isha mentioned that they are the torch bearers. They can be made used to it. So when we got into this project, we found that it was spearheaded, literally spearheaded by kids of that school, of that community. So awareness, as Vikram, you have mentioned that awareness is like the key of every problem to be solved. So when we explained this problem, the people, the community members were very very receptive, and kids made it more easy. So they went, they go extra mile in creating awareness. They used to, on every special occasion, be 26 January, 15 August, they will have a rally in their area with banners and posters about this. So it was very, very heartening to see that how kids were actually educating their parents. Most of them were like, daily wage earners. So in a very short span of time, Jasab, in 3-4 years time, we are able to see that it's easy to educate people. It's really really easy to convince the people who are doing this dirty business without knowing the danger of it. And once you serve the solutions to them, they are eager to take on. And it's just that we need champions like the local organizations, and those champions grooming the young children to take it forward.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, all credit goes to ma'am, Probila ma'am,
Oh,
because
thank you.
yeah,
It's always it's always joint efforts of
yeah,
community, organizational, technical agencies, lawyers
Collect-
like so. It's
Absolutely.
we cannot move for change without a very collaborative effort.
yeah,
And when I see purely from a child rights perspective, and the kind of impact you all were sharing now, I can really see that these are issues which needs to be seen from a child's lens. And if we don't move towards that from a purely legal framework, then the chances of change, at least at the level of lawmaking and governance and accountability and all those things, will remain really at a very very low level. So any last comment from you, Isha, before we close?
Glad to be a part of this. Learned so much about lead poisoning. I mean, being an environmental lawyer, I'm aware of the dangers of lead poisoning. But to see so much happening and so much in detail was great. And and to be introduced to this aspect of child rights as well along with it was very enriching for me as well. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you everyone. And while please sir, please could want to say something? जहाँ साहब कुछ बोल रहे थे आप?
no, 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 not कुछ नहीं बोल रहे थे,
So
nothing.
as I close, I just close with a commitment that we may regroup again sometime, and we will like to see purely from the UN guidelines on business principles. and human rights. So when I see children and businesses, like Jasab said very clearly, that it's more like a organized crime uh, being done in a sense of a business, but it's actually an organized crime. So we may regroup again sometime and look at the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, and purely from environmental and child rights perspective, how businesses must behave and keep children in priority and environment in priority, and then work. So thank you so much to everyone, to each individual panel. There were technical issues, but I am very hopeful that people must have enjoyed and been got informed by this webinar. So thank you so much. Thanks to all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you. Yeah.